Welcome to the Research Like a Pro question and answer series. In this video, Diana Elder talks about how to create a project in AI for genealogical research. And this is a fun way to dive into artificial intelligence and really understand what we can do with all of the documents that we create as we're doing a research project. We have a timeline, a locality guide, we might have past research reports. As we upload these to the project knowledge in Claude AI or ChatGPT's custom GPT, we can then save that project knowledge and have multiple conversations with the chatbot about that project. And Diana's going to share several examples of how she used this as she's writing her report, creating tables of tax data, and so forth. So hopefully this gives you some great ideas.
And I thought I would share how I created a project in AI for my research. This is something that I have fallen in love with, and I found it to be so beneficial, and especially for this last project that I did. So here are some of the things we can do when we create a project. And I will just note right off the bat that I did use Claude AI, so the latest Claude version, which is 3.5 Sonnet, and I have a paid account, so it allows me to do the projects. But I just discovered that Perplexity has a new addition to their free offering of spaces, which is very similar to the project in Claude. And I'll show you a screenshot of that after I go through a few slides showing you what I did in Claude. So just keep in mind, there's now a free version that you can do some of the same things with that I have done. So this is what you do when you have a project. And you can use other AI to do some of these same things, such as ChatGPT and Gemini. You can upload your basic documents and then have the AI help you with various things. So just know that there are other LLMs, large language models, that will let you do some of these things. But the value for me with doing a project in Claude was I could put it all there in one place and I didn't have to start new chats. I could just have it all there. So this was the project knowledge that I ended up uploading. The very first thing I uploaded was my timeline because that's the first thing I did. And I asked AI to help me to write the background knowledge for my report using that timeline. Then, as I completed my research log, I uploaded that. I uploaded some key documents. I had it help me work with some transcriptions I had done, uploaded my locality guide and research reports. Then I have reports here plural because sometimes you are working on a project where you've already done, say, 2 or 3 research reports. You're on phase 4. Well, you can upload those reports and ask the AI to help consolidate all those. And that is so helpful so that you have a starting point for your new project based on everything you did in the past. So here is a little bit of my Henderson Weatherford research report. I did this for Research Like a Pro Study Group 10 that we just completed. And you'll notice that I did put in the limitations that I used artificial intelligence. So I used it to create tables, analyze research data, and write portions of the report. And I noted that all use of AI is sourced. So I did try to source and put a footnote when I used it. So for instance, here's a little tiny one after the results summary. And you'll see that it was created by Claude 3.5 Sonnet and revised by me. So I always do some revision, but I appreciated the way that it just took my writing, my report, what I had discovered, and then made these nice bullet points for me. And of course, whenever you prompt AI to do something, if you don't like the way it does it at first, then you just tell it to redo it and ask it to do better or massage it the way you want it done, and it will rewrite it for you. So I saved a lot of time on my report this time using some AI tools. So here's what a Claude project looks like. You, as I mentioned, you do have to have a pro account, but think of this. You could just pay for 1 month when you are ready to do some work with it. You would not necessarily have to keep that subscription if you didn't want to. So you have something called project knowledge and you get to add content. And you'll see that I am at 37% of knowledge capacity used. So I could add a lot more to this project. And I've actually added a lot, everything that I showed you in that previous slide. So I have a very large file of my research report, and I have a very large file of my research log. I have my timeline, and then I have some other things as well in here. But these are the basics that I have added. So when I was working on the background information, I had uploaded that timeline and I asked it to write the background information for me. When it first came in, it was okay, but I didn't love all of it. And so I did do some rewriting on the background information, but it was really nice to have something just to start with. Now, here's the trick. I wanted to have the citations because I asked it to use the citations in my timeline and to source everything that it wrote. So you can see here that it did. And it looks great, you know. Here it talks about that same year he likely married clumsy, and here would be the citation for the marriage record. And, oh, we can't see that. Let's look at number one, which was tax records. And it says he established himself through an 1839 poll tax in Izard County. Did a really good job of taking my information, my source citations, and putting it into here. But the trick is copying this and getting it into my report so that the citations come through correctly. So I asked it to use markdown for the citations. And then I copied that and I used a special tool in Microsoft Word called Writage so that it would come in correctly. Writage is something that you purchase just one time. You download it for Windows or for Macs, and then it will show up in your toolbar up above in Microsoft Word. So you can see here that I have Writage open. And here are all the regular things that we have open. I have Writage, and when I open it up, there is a paste markdown. And when I pasted the markdown, I just copied from Claude. I used its copy icon. When I pasted it in, it came in correctly with all the citations where they were supposed to be and the little footnotes where they were supposed to be. And then I could go ahead and revise at will. So I revised once I had pasted it as markdown and I had everything here just perfect. Then I went through and rewrote quite a bit of it just because I had some additional ideas from what AI had originally put in there. I thought, oh, that's a good point, but I don't really agree with that. I want to add some things. So it was such a good way to get started on the writing. Now, another thing that was very, very helpful for this report was creating tables. And I had a lot of data. This was one of those projects where my research log just kept growing and growing. I had so much data. And I wanted to get that into my report without having to spend a ton of time on tables. So I had copied and pasted from Ancestry, where I got my census data for the various households in the 1830 census for these Weatherfords. So I had this in my research log, you know, what everybody's household was comprised of, but I did not want to take the time to put that into a table and go through each one of those. That just sounded way too much work. This is one of those things that AI is really good at. So I copied those from my research log and I said, provide a table. So it took a couple tries. It first did something I didn't like as well. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I had to tell it that I wanted it to be with the headings across the top. You know, I just would say, well, let's have the people across the top and you know, I gave it some parameters after I saw what it came up with at first. And then I did my fact checking to make sure that it put everybody in the right column. And then for my report, I highlighted the one spot that I was really discussing in the narrative. But hopefully you can see how very helpful that was to have AI just take what I already had and get that into a nice table that I could use. Now, I will also note that when I copied this, I copied it and it was asked it to provide it in Markdown, and I copied it and I pasted it again with Writage using paste Markdown. So it actually came out in a table format. If you just copy the table from AI and then paste it into Word, it will come in kind of strange formatting. So I was very happy. I just adjusted some columns, added some color. Then you can do whatever you want with your tables, added a heading here. Now, for a much more complicated part of my project, and I know many of you have projects like this where you are getting so much data and you've got to try to get that into your report, and that can be difficult. So for this one, I was looking at all the tax records for the Weatherfords in Dallas County from the beginning of the Weatherford listings, which was 1846 or 7, up to about 1864. And there were a lot of people, a lot of Weatherfords, probably 6 or 7 individuals, and every single listing in the tax roll, they would use a different line for every piece of land. So I ended up having 126 rows in my Airtable base for these people, and they were all mixed up by name. And of course, Airtable will let you group and sort and do views, but I needed to get that into my project. And I needed to do some analysis on it, even beyond what Airtable would do. And this was a perfect thing for Claude to help me with. Now you will notice up here across the top that I did a special Airtable log. I was starting to use the research log for this, but I found that I just needed to do my own table within within the Airtable base. So the way I did this was, here's the research log over here. I don't have it open, but in the research log, I would put the citation for the year, say for 1847. And then I could link to that. I made it a linked field so that I could link to all the people that were in 1847 to that specific entry, which had the citation and the link to 1847 tax list. But then I would just go ahead and give everybody their own row. And I did do the different headings as the tax records were set up. So the tax list had all these different things, and sometimes there wasn't anything, sometimes there was, and I just set that up, and then it was so easy to go ahead and add the information. And you'll notice I did use the dollar part of the field, so everything would automatically have the dollar signs. It made it so fast to do my entry. So just a little note on setting up a special table within your research log. So for my AI project, I uploaded a CSV. I had created a CSV from Airtable from that specific tax table, and I uploaded that. It was a very large file. And on this one, I set up a special project just for the tax list. I could have put it with my regular Weatherford project, but I had quite a bit I wanted to do, and I decided just to keep it separate because it was more than just Henderson. It was all these other Weatherfords as well. So I had uploaded it, and then I asked it to create a table for me. So it did. It took my my CSV file and uploaded that for me. I was happy with how it came in. I made sure it was how I wanted it. And then I again did the copy using Markdown and then did the paste from Markdown within my Word document. Now, I did decide to put it in the appendix because it was really long. It takes up about 3 or 4 pages in my appendix, and I didn't want it in the body of the report. I felt like it was too much data for the body of the report, but it could be in the appendix for anybody who really wanted to go look at it and understand what I had done. I did have to adjust the rows a little bit and make sure that everything fit. I deleted a couple of columns that didn't have any information in them so I could make it work. And I will note that it was a little too much for Claude to handle doing the whole thing at once, and it broke it into 3 pieces for me, which was fine. So I just have 3 pieces. The first one was 1847 to 1856, and then there's 2 other sections of it. So I was very happy about how that was so easy to take my data. Did I do some fact checking? Absolutely. I went and looked and it was using my data, so it didn't hallucinate. It just brought over what I gave it and put it into a format I could use in a report. I also wanted to have some summaries within the body of my report. And that would have taken me hours to go through 126 lines for each person. And the people are just scattered throughout that tax list. Every year they would be mentioned, or maybe they'd skip a year, or, it was a lot of data. And so I decided to have AI help me to do a nice summary. So I wrote, tracking the other Weatherfords in Dallas found they arrived over a decade earlier than Henderson. Although relationships could be drawn between many of the Weatherfords based on the land description, such as a man disappearing from the tax list and his widow then paying the tax on the same land, no like relationships could be drawn between Henderson, who was my research subject, and the other Dallas Weatherfords. And then I said below is a summary of each Weatherford listing, and I do cite Claude. So this was my citation summary created by Claude based on the full tax list abstracted by Diana, 28 October 2024. So I'm letting whoever know who's reading it know that I did not write this, nor did I do the summary. I let Claude do that work for me. Some really interesting things that Claude did without me even asking it to do. It analyzed the economic data. It realized that these were tax lists and we were looking at values. It made good assumptions and it found connections between people. So, for instance, Jefferson Weatherford was an administrator, a guardian, an agent, and another administrator for another person. It never tried to say that these were family members, but it did pull out these people, which I appreciated. And it noticed where they lived and talked about the first settler, etc. So I put this into my report and it gives you a little, in a nutshell, all these different people. And then I did want to do a little bit more with my research subject, who was Henderson. And so I asked AI to just give me a summary of his specifics. And so I was able to get that how I wanted and put that into the report. I also cited that. And then, as I showed you already, the full text data is in the appendix. So what part did I have AI help me with? Well, after I had finished my report and had it how I wanted, and including some of the parts that AI helped me with, I did put in the complete report and asked it to write a conclusion for me. And I wasn't very happy with the conclusion at first. I had it needed it to be a little bit more specific. I asked for some different things. I did some revision of my own, but it turned out to be great. Same thing with result summary based on the uploaded report and revised, and same thing with future research suggestions. And in each case, I did do a citation. So the basics of the project were done by me. The research was done by me. All of the data entry was done by me. And getting it into the report, I probably saved several hours by having Claude help me to do all of these different pieces. All right, so I promised to show you a new option for AI. So that is Claude, what I use. It's $20 a month for the Pro plan where you can set up a project. But Perplexity just released a brand new tool. And oops, this shifted. This should be Spaces. So Spaces is the new tool. It's very, very similar to Claude's projects, where you get to create a space. You can do 5 free files. So I have not upgraded to Pro. I've done 4 of my free files uploaded. You can see my space is just about out. And so I was just doing some experimentation, put another research log and a couple of other reports in Henderson's timeline. I was going to do a little work and see how it would do on writing some background information. And so I could set up. I don't think there is a limit to how many spaces. I could be wrong, but you can only have, those 5 free files. So I would encourage you to go ahead and try the for free version at Perplexity and see what you think. And of course, you could always just pay for Claude for the time you're doing your writing and see how that works. So, some tips and takeaways for using AI in writing. Ask yourself, how can AI help me? Set it up your research log with AI in mind. The only reason I could use my research log to help me do those tables was that I had done a really good job of data extraction and had created my citations within my research log so they would be ready for the report. So if you do that, have your research log really well done, then it's much easier to ask AI to use it. Always note which model you're using in the date for citation purposes and provide a link to get back to the chat. That can all go within your research log. Then you can upload all your relevant project information, reports, timelines, transcriptions, and so forth, and then really experiment with different AI models. There are a lot of things out there, and of course, it changes so rapidly. So you may get comfortable with one model and then it will change and something else will come out. But the more you get used to it, the easier it will be to transfer to the latest and greatest because you'll already have a feeling for how to work with AI and you'll have some ideas for how you can use it. One of the things that I learned from Steve Little and Mark Thompson in their Institute course last summer was whenever you're doing a genealogy related task, just think about how can AI help me, which is what I did with this project. And I was pleasantly surprised to see how well it could help. So some of the roles for AI that we use in genealogy are creative, like you saw how it created those timelines for me. It can be a tutor. It can teach you as you're writing. Maybe you have a question about something you've come across and you're trying to understand how to explain it. It can be your coworker, as in writing that conclusion, and it can be a coach. You can upload your report and ask it to suggest how to make it better. You could ask for places where your evidence is a little weak and you can get some good help.